Hello BookTube. Today I'm going to be giving you my review of Story of O by Pauline Reage, which was the pen name of Anne Desclos. Desclos. It was originally published in French in 1954. Then it was given an English translation by the American publisher and translator Richard Seaver in 1965, and then it was published in the UK by Corgi in this edition in 1970. The story follows the main character, who is solely referred to as O, as she willingly goes through BDSM training at a series of schools, and then under the tutelage of her, the short tutelage of her lover Renee, as well as his half brother, an Englishman called Sir Stephen. And during the course of the story, you see her emotions towards the situation develop, and her become she's willing at the start, but becomes more and more willing, and sort of takes on the sort of nature of being a willing sex slave, to sort of final conclusion at the end of the book. Now, I won't go into any more details on the plots in terms of plot spoilers, because I simply don't want to spoil it for you. Now, I should just explain why it is I read this book and actually how I got hold of this particular copy of the book. I started university in September 2013, and during the first couple of weeks there, I got to know a very attractive young woman who, for some reason, was talking to me. I don't know why. And we got talking about books, and then a few days later, she gave me this and suggested I might enjoy it. Now, I think, looking back, that this was her making a very subtle pass at me, but because I'm not any good at that sort of thing, and also I was sort of caught up with getting things sorted out for university and other things that were going on at home at the time, I didn't get the attempted pass at all, and so I more than likely missed on quite an enjoyable experience. But I just kept the book. I accepted the book, but I didn't get around to reading it, and I didn't think much of it. And then a few weeks ago, I did a sort of library tour of my books, and I found it, and so I put it on the shelf where I could see it. And then a few weeks ago, then at the beginning of September, Noah at the Bookworm decided he was going to be reading under his own influence and none of Ven's The Book Corner, despite Noah's claims otherwise, that he was going to read smutty books, and this is very much a smutty book. And so I suggested it as a possible as something to read, and I said that if he did read it, I would read it with him. And so Noah has read it. I'll leave a link to his review in the description below. And that's why I read it. Now, even though I didn't read this until this month, I had, between being given it and reading it, done some research into what the book was about, and so when I came to read it, I wasn't shocked by the content or the themes, and the story in itself I found somewhat interesting, but not overly so. It seemed very sort of as you would expect for a story of this sort. Now, I know that Noah had some concerns about it because over consent issues. However, I didn't have those concerns because I very much took this not as a realistic portrayal of a BDSM relationship, but very much a fantasy of such. And so I didn't. So I sort of suspended my disbelief, and so I didn't think there were, to my mind, consent issues there, with it being a fantasy. And so, overall in the story, if you're interested in what BDSM relationships, the view of BDSM by those practicing it in the 50s was like in France, especially a female point of view, you can give it a go. However, I wouldn't recommend it in this translation, because one of the issues that I had with this book, and I know Noah also had with this book, was that the translation was bloody awful. Now, before I go on, I'm going to read one of the blurbs on the back of this book, and this is by the author Graham Greene. And the blurb goes, a rare thing, a pornographic book, well written and without a trace of obscenity. Now, either Graham Greene read a different English language translation to me, or he read it in the original French, because there is no way on God's green earth you could call this well written, given the translation, given the way that this is translated. It is translated, to my mind, almost literally from the French, to the degree that it is almost as if, as Noah said in his review, it had been translated using Google Translate. There are words in here that I wouldn't expect any other translator to use to describe parts of the human body, and I don't imagine those words meaning French what they mean in here. It is just it's a bloody awful translation. I mean, it was that bad. It was like wading through treacle reading it, to the extent that I had to sometimes, after only reading 20 pages, put it down because I couldn't go any further. Not because of the contents of the book, just because the language, the translation, was so awful. So, whilst I can recommend you read it for the story and the themes, I can't recommend you read it in this translation because it's so bad. And so, if you can find another English translation, or you can read French, read it in the original French, fine. But in this translation by Richard Seaver from 1965, I wouldn't bother because it's bloody awful. With that, BookTube, I'll end my review and I'll say goodbye.